into some of the more productive ways of building it. Now, one of my suggestions, which I found has worked in many parts of the world, is small and medium enterprises, yes, which employ about 80% of Indian population, and so in the subcontinent, you know. What these people often lack, it's not that Indian people are not hardworking, or they're not working, or they don't have education or aspiration. What they lack is actually that finishing and marketing of their products and some training which can really put their small-scale product to a value chain. Because if you don't add those products to value chain, you can never make these small and medium enterprises sort of more profitable and productive. So my suggestion and question to you, when you are thinking about some of your schemes, even including some of your training and schools and other things, or even the projects you are talking about, villages, please think about this kind of training, marketing channels, which you can easily do now, being you are Pallavi. So
I think if you're talking about the skills of people that are currently in India, you're saying that they are things that need more finishing.
Yes,
okay,
if they can be trained more and can be linked with marketing
right,
channel,
well,
so that can be more productive and that can be very
I agree, yeah. And there are a lot of people that have realized that India has a very large task force that can be put to sort of, you know, is very valuable for the external world. I remember a comment that Shashi Tharoor made in a book that he wrote, is that India has one of the largest bodies of graduates, yet people are also one of the largest bodies of unemployable graduates, because of this lack of finishing, this lack of communication skills. And I personally, in my experience, have seen that a lack of interpersonal communication and a lack of critical thinking because of the rote learning system which happens in India is one of the biggest drawbacks. So, you know, I think what we have Narendra Modi has just implemented the Skills India initiative, which I think tackles this. How do we make sure that someone who is an electrician understands how wiring is done properly and isn't just sticking a metal wire into a wall? And the TAFE sector in Australia is very good at vocational training. So I'm sure that if we think about it, we can create some kind of pathway between the TAFE sector and the workforce in India. So there are endless possibilities. And again, if you have any specific, I don't know how I can broadly improve, you know, the Indian kind of workforce and export them to the world over, but if I have any ideas, I'll definitely implement them. Any other questions? Yes, the crumping.
Good evening, Pallavi. Obviously you're extremely talented, and I think we're all grateful for being in your presence. I think you deserve a round of applause.
Thank
you. My question to you is, behind every humanitarian, there's someone that inspires. I'd like to ask you, who inspires yourself?
It's a hard one. Obviously, my two parents, and I'm not saying that just because they're here. I think often, you know, my dad was just pointing out 2 nights ago when we landed in Perth that the first night they ever spent in Australia was in Netherlands on Lock Street. And I think about that, and I think about 2 people that came to this country with a young child, my older brother, who's always conspicuously missing from these sort of events. You know, what it must have been like to take that kind of leap of faith. And I always say that my story in India is sort of an inverse mirror image to what they went through, because I went to India as an Australian, albeit with the garb and the facade of being Indian. My consciousness was very much Australian. So I had to think of the challenges that they would have faced as new migrants in Australia. I think of my paternal grandmother, Dr. Krishna Sharda in particular. She was a huge influence on me. She's someone that always really pushed me towards my humanities interests and to my interests in philosophy and you know, Vedic philosophy, which I was strangely interested in as a child. I was kind of a freak. And she always said, do what you need to do, even if it means acting or performance. And there are not many people from my extended family that really supported my journey into the performing arts in India. But she's someone that would always call me when she was alive when I was on set and say, it's really amazing that you're doing what you're doing, so keep that hard work going. And she's one of the people that used to send me my VHS tapes and my audio cassettes of like Hum Aapke Hai Kaun and DDLJ in the mid-90s, which were the sources of my inspiration. But I've just been very fortunate that I've had very real life sources of inspiration. All of my teachers at Lowther Hall Anglican Grammar School in Melbourne, all of my professors at Melbourne University have been intrinsic parts of who I've become, and they're all great friends today, so I'm really lucky.
Good on you for believing in yourself as well.
Good evening, Pallavi. This is Preet from OZ Indian Channel.
Good evening.
Okay, my question is about how you felt when you were crowned Miss India Australia in 2010.
I felt young.
Okay, do you believe that this title came with much responsibility?
Yes, indeed. My decision to be part of the Miss India Australia kind of stage back in 2010 came at the back of what was happening in the media with student violence and the idea that Australia was a hostile place for Indian students to come and study. I'd been living in India for about a year and a half by then, and was very surprised when my phone was ringing and it was a call from a news channel in Mumbai saying, what do you have to say about Australia being racist towards Indians? Particularly talking about Melbourne, which is obviously where I grew up. So I was very disturbed by this, and both of my parents have been academics and have taught in the international education sector for a very long time. My mum, just retired as the Director of South Asia Relations from UWA. So I knew about internationalisation in Australia, what it entailed, and how welcoming student bodies have been towards students from overseas. So when I started to think about whether I wanted to partake in this competition, I realized that at that point, I think it was a changing point for me. It was a turning point, because I realized that it wasn't just about my artistic pursuits. It wasn't about being seen as a dancer and an actor. It was a responsibility that I had as an Indian Australian of privilege, and I say that not lightly, because to be a first-generation Indian Australian when your parents came here as skilled migrants is a very privileged position to be in, and not everyone that comes here as an Indian migrant has that privilege. So I realized that my responsibility as part of this community and this first community of Indian Australians was to the incoming community of Indian Australians. So that was the impetus at the time. I was very fortunate that, people liked what I had to say and I was crowned. Unfortunately, when I went to the international competition, it was on the back of a very bad accident, the scars of which you can still see today. So I performed in Durban I did a Bharatanatyam dance piece with one hand because I couldn't move my right hand. And I said, I'm still going to partake because I'm an Aussie and that's what Aussies do. And I think that's what it was about. It was the start of all of what you're seeing today. What today is a culmination of the last 6 years of a very conscious effort to include both India and Australia in what I do.
Hello Pallavi, I'm
Hello.
Puneet from Indian Link Media Group.
Hi.
My question to you is, how comfortable are you with the Hindi language?
आप हिंदी में इंटरव्यू कर लीजिए। मैं जब छोटी थी मेरे पापा कहते थे कि अगर हिंदी में नहीं बोलोगे आपके नंबर कट जाएंगे। मुझे ये नहीं पता था किस चीज़ के नंबर कट रहे हैं, पर मैं डर के मारे में हिंदी बोलती थी।
तो मतलब आप शुरू से जब मेलबर्न में रहते थे तब से आप बोलते
जी, मैं कहती हूँ कि मैं ज्यादातर मेलबर्न में हिंदी बोलती हूँ, मुंबई में कोई हिंदी नहीं बोलता है। जब मैं पहले गई थी, मैं एक टैक्सी में बैठी थी और एक टैक्सी वाले ने बोला कि मैडम आपकी हिंदी बड़ी शुद्ध है, आप यूपी से आए हैं। मैंने कहा नहीं जी, मैं ऑस्ट्रेलिया से आई हूँ।
That's so nice. And another question from my side. Can you tell me 3 things which are the best part, which is the best part about being a celebrity?
Situations like this, where I get to have open dialogue with people that can be bothered to listen. I think it is that. It's the access that you have to people. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, obviously. Sometimes people give you nice saris to wear. But no, I don't think of myself as a celebrity, honestly. My dad always tells me off. He says, आप He says, how can you go to the shops dressed like that? You know, think about it, you're a Bollywood actress now. And I say, oh, I forget sometimes. So I don't think of it as a celebrity thing. I just think of myself as an artist. And the privilege of being known or people enjoying your work is that you get to speak to them. And I hope that through my work, I can speak to more people.
Thank you.
My dad has a question. I hope Facebook Live is getting my dad on.
Not a question.
Oh.
It's a request. We talked about Shakespeare, but I wonder how many of us know about Dr. B.V. Karant, who was the director of National School of Drama. Unfortunately, cultural activities in India have not been at the very forefront. As an ode to Dr. B.V. Karant, who was my first drama teacher, could you please repeat what he taught me? Kavi Kul.
कवि कुल कुठार काका ककुवधर जी का कथन है कि कालिंदी कुल की कलकंठी कोकिला केवल काकली में कूकती है. My dad told me that on the way to school once.
What does it mean?
It's about a अरे आप ये भी हम बाद में बात करेंगे. It's too much pressure. But I preferred that to when he used to make me do physics problems and maths problems. My mom told me stuff too.
I don't have a question, but I have an observation. As a professor of engineering, my passion used to be encouraging women in engineering. And I only had one woman at home who I could pursue. My biggest failure was that I could not even get her anywhere near engineering, even when she was so brilliant. But today I feel almost incredibly lucky that she didn't go into that mundane line of mine. She has so much more, fulfilling life because of the artistic vision that she had and artistic interest she had. And I just want to say I'm very proud of you, Pallavi, and I'm very, very grateful to all my friends who have turned up on such a short notice. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mom.
As I said, I've got lots of questions, so if there's no one asking, I can.
And if anyone gets bored, you're able to get up, have a cup of tea. We can make this casual as well.
So in that video of your school in Melbourne, you talked about the importance of Bollywood and going back to India's history. If you look at sort of the geographical boundaries of India, probably before India was formed on the 15th of August 1947, the largest that India had ever been was during the reign of Ashoka Maurya. And that was even sort of 2/3 of the current size of India. So it's a huge land area, and there's huge diversity. And I think sort of you mentioned the importance of Bollywood, and I actually think that without Bollywood and cricket, India would have probably disintegrated. They are the sort of two things that probably bind all Indians together, irrespective of their languages and cultures and things like that. So, bearing in mind this theme, what I'd like to know is what your favorite Bollywood movie is.
I have so many. When I was young, my father showed me a lot of Bollywood films. So there's an era of filmmaking that I'm very fond of. I watched films like Naya Daur, Teesri Kasam, Sangam, Abhiman, Silsila, and then obviously came, as I said, the Yash Chopra era, which I was very fond of, which is Chandni and Lamhe. And when Sri Devi was called Pallavi in Lamhe, I obviously thought it was a cosmic sign from the gods that this was the career that I was meant to have. And then we went on to the Madhuri Dixit era, which was obviously something that I was very fond of because of the beautiful dances. And Hum Aapke Hai Kaun was a very beloved film of mine. So there are many of them of different genres. I think I've evolved as a moviegoer, as films have evolved. I'm really enjoying the realism which is being imbued into Hindi cinema today. And I really hope that, Begum Jaan is a film that I can be proud of in the way that I was, proud of a lot of films many years ago.
Thank you, Pallavi, for that wonderful session, and thank you to all of you for coming tonight. We're open for refreshments at the back, and you can have one-to-one chat if you would like to. Please, a round of applause for Pallavi.
Thank you all.